I believe every tool should have a home. Right now, I have some tools that are homeless. What I mean by that is, I believe that you should have a location that you store a tool at, and when you're not using that tool, that's where it goes. When you need it, then you pull it out, use it, and then put it back. Right now, I've got some tools that are, especially my cordless tools, I just don't have a place to store them now. And they just kind of go from workbench to workbench on the side of my table saw. So I'm hoping to resolve that problem. I want to have all my drill bits and my fasteners all in one location along with my cordless tools. I have all my drill bits in one location, but I don't have my fasteners. They're kind of in a couple different locations. So I'm wanting to resolve that problem. So I'm going to be working on this shelf to hang on the wall that hopefully will resolve all the problems I'm having. We're in the early stages of spring, and I'm trying to do some shop organization before I start production on product to sell. So that's where I'm at right now. I did not film me using a track saw to cross-cut this sheet of plywood down, simply because in my last video there was lots of shots of me using a track saw cutting a sheet of plywood. And there's only so many interesting shots you can get of using a track saw to cut a sheet of plywood. But right here we do have some table saw action going on. I chose to use the table saw to cut my shelving to width. Right now I am getting the rough width of it until I can kind of put this shelf together and find out exactly how wide I really do want all these shelves to be. I like to use my crosscut sled to cut the dados. I position the stop block where I need it to be, and then I just push the piece through. I do have this clamped down to the sled, and I always stop the saw and make sure the dado blade has stopped completely before I pull the piece back across the dado blade, because I don't want anything to happen if the piece would shift or anything. It could be unsafe or it could mess up the dado. And for the center divider, I'm putting a dado on both faces. That way it'll support the shelf on both sides. And I am planning on using dowels to reinforce this joint. Right now I'm going to set up my L fence to get a straight line. I just roughed that out at the bandsaw. The only thing I'm wanting to do is basically have clearance for this piece of plywood to kind of slide underneath it, the waste part. Not really going for any particular measurement at this time. Now what I'm wanting to do right now is I'm placing my square up against the tooth of the blade. I don't want it on the plate part, I want it on the tooth. Place my square up against that, and I just align this edge with that tooth. I'll just raise my blade up enough to where you can kind of touch this. You're basically just wanting to make sure that you are going to clear the plywood. Got a piece of plywood with some sandpaper double stick tape to it. I'm just going to kind of line that up with the edge, my pencil mark, because I'm about an 1/8 inch to 1/16 away from that pencil mark when I roughed it out on the bandsaw. So I just want something to where I can kind of grip a hold of this and then slide it up against the fence. And then I can make that cut. And then we can use this piece as our pattern to mark out the rest of our pieces. Now what I've got in front of me is both sides, and I want to make sure I have a mirror image. So I have the angle on this side, so I'm wanting to make sure I have an angle on this side, because if I had the angle this way, it wouldn't fit with the dados the way I've got them cut. So you always want to make sure, kind of line up the pieces, make sure you have a mirror image of each side. That way when I bring this together, I know it'll fit. Now I've just put some two-sided tape on this piece, and I'm going to fit these two pieces together. Just want to kind of make sure I get them lined up, and I don't have them lined up. And this double-sided tape sticks really well.
One thing that I could have done a little differently in this situation is cut a scrap piece of wood to fit within the dados. That would have lined up the two pieces perfectly, but I just didn't take the time to do that.
Sits really well in it. Okay, I got the both backs on the table saw fence. What I'm doing, I'm trying to line up these dados, the slots. That way I can squeeze this together. And then everything should line up. Now I can take this over to the bandsaw, cut off, leaving about an 1/8 inch, 1/16 of an inch, and I can bring it back to my table saw, run it through the L fence, and I can use this as my pattern. I don't have to even bother with the piece of plywood with the sandpaper on it any longer. Now I've got the center piece, and this piece is a little bit narrower than what the sides are. So what I'm going to do is lay the side face down where this is the back, this is the face of the drawer or the shelving, and I want to set it up that way. I've got double-sided tape on this piece here, and I'm just going to stick those together. That way I have that offset, because I'm going to have a French cleat in the back. That way this is lined up in the front. Now I look like I'm lined up pretty good, and then I can just take this over to the bandsaw, cut it off, and do the same thing with my L fence. Wanted to talk a little bit why I take this over to the bandsaw and cut off the waste. That's just so I don't have so much waste underneath this spinning blade. There's more of a chance of kickback with that being trapped underneath there. And I do have about this much that I'm cutting off. So, but if this kicks back, it's not really going to do that much damage. But if you have big pointy sharp piece kick back at you, that could do some damage. So it's just a little safety issue. So that's something you want to think about when you're using that. I want to talk about the sides and the center section for a moment. As you see right now, they're all the same height, and they don't need to be. When I was designing this, I want the bottom shelf and the top shelf to go all the way across with no breaks in between it. Because what this shelving is going to do, it's going to hold my drill bits and fasteners. This center section is what's going to kind of divide the two. So this, from the dado down is waste, from the dado up is waste. Now my reasoning for cutting this the same height and cutting them the same size is for cutting the dados. I could butt this up against my stop block, cut my dado. Now both sides would have been fine to do that. But if I had already removed this, I'd had to move my stop block and readjust it in order to cut the dado here. To me, it just seemed a lot simpler just to go ahead and have everything the same height, but my end up to the stop block, cut my dados on both sides, and then cut this piece off. So it just seemed a lot simpler to me to do it that way. Another thing I want to talk about is when I attach the shelving. Now, I have no problem here because there's a lot of support pushing down. But as far as if something would hit the shelf coming out this way, I couldn't. Now this is the side, so I could drill a hole and put a screw in. I'm going to use glue in here. I could drill a hole and put a screw in that. But this center section, there's a dado on both sides. So I can't just drive a screw in to hold it in place. So I've thought about this for a while, and what I think I'm going to do is drill some holes clear through here and put some dowels in. And you have a dowel maybe an inch, inch and a half coming out. That way there's going to be some type of substance inside, a little tenon inside of the shelf to kind of keep it, to help hold it in place. So I think that's going to be a lot stronger joint than just having this sit in there and glue. So that's what I'm going to do.
I'm using my table saw to cut the boards to a rough width. The reason why I'm doing a rough width at this point is the way the sides are designed, there's an angle to them, and I want to be able to match that angle with the shelf. So I'm going to do a dry fit and then scribe that angle to the side of the shelf and then cut it to its perfect size after that. I'm just going through my plans and getting the measurements and adjusting the rip fence when needed. After cutting the board, I'll just mark it with some painter's tape and mark which shelf this is, and that way a little easier for me to find that part when needed. Right now I'm just marking the shelf, the angles that I need to cut it at, and also this will give me the width that I need to cut the shelf at.
Now since I have this clamped up also, I'm going to go ahead and use the holes that's protruding through, that came through on the sides, go ahead and pre-drill for my dowels to go into the shelf while this is assembled. That way once I get these angles cut and get these shelves cut to size and I go to start putting it together, I should be ready to just start gluing up.
I'm using a combination square to kind of get an idea of how far I want to drill into the shelf, and I just use that to be able to mark out where my depth stop will be on my drill bit.
Now I've installed a high-tech depth stop, some blue painter's tape on my drill bit, and I'm just going to use the hole itself to center up the drill bit, and then I'm going to drill the holes till I reach that high-tech depth stop. Now as you can see, I've removed this center section of shelving, and I still have these holes showing here in the center divider. I'm going to use these holes to drill into this shelf because I'm going to have a dowel going through this hole into both shelves. It'll tie these two shelves together. Now once I go to start gluing this together, I'll glue one section up, drive my dowels in, and then I'll have the dowel protruding, and I can line my shelf up and slide it into place. Now I have this center divider, and both sides that have this angle to it, but I have no idea what that angle is. I just randomly drew it on there. So how am I going to find that out? I could use an angle gauge and then match it to this, then put it onto my table saw and tilt the blade that way. Or I can just use this. Just line this up against the saw blade. I've got my saw blade raised all the way up. Now I've got my angle set. Don't know what it is, it doesn't really matter. I just know it matches the side of this.
Now I will use that pencil line that I drew on there when I did my dry fit, and I will line up the blade with that pencil line, adjust my rip fence as needed, and then I can cut my piece to the final rip. I like to use my crosscut sled to cut my shelving to its final length, and like I've said many times before, I use blue painter's tape to mark what piece I am cutting. That way it's easy for assembly and I know exactly what part that is. Now, one side of the shelving is a little bit wider than the other, so I will cut all one size, and then I will adjust my stop block and then cut the other side of the shelving. I'm using hard maple for my French cleat. I decided to use that because this shelf could be holding quite a bit of weight, and I felt like a hardwood would be more suitable for carrying that weight. Cutting a dado in this piece of hard maple. The bottom shelf will be placed inside this dado, and that will help support the bottom shelf. Plus, I feel like it'll help support the entire piece from sagging over a period of time. Now, I could have installed a dado blade and just cut this in one pass, but I felt like the time frame of me taking out the saw blade, installing the dado blade, and cutting the piece, it'd just be just as quick to nibble it away with my rip blade, just moving the rip fence over a little bit at a time.
That's a straight dowel rod. These dowel rods seem to be a little bit on the tight side for the holes, so I'm just going to wrap a piece of sandpaper around it. I've got it chucked up in my drill. I'm just going to kind of sand them down a little bit. Got to get kind of careful out here to the end because this one's kind of warped pretty bad. But just a little bit of sanding takes some of the reduce the size just a little bit. Yeah, those seem like they slide in a little bit better. So I've got 3 dowel rods. I'm hoping that's going to be enough for what I've got planned here. So yeah. I am using oak dowel rods. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I don't believe that I did, but it seems like those are fitting pretty well now.
You can see how that bottom shelf fits into that dado, and that hard maple will help provide quite a bit of support for this entire shelf. I'm hammering in the oak dowels into that bottom shelf, and that'll help give it some more support as well. Applying a little glue in all the holes that the dowels will fit into, and that way it'll just prevent me from having to have so much glue on the dowel as I'm hammering it in, and a little bit of less cleanup. Takes a little bit of time to get all the shelving pieces to line up in the dados and get everything seated in place, but I eventually get there and get this shelf glued up. I end up applying some clamps to help hold the side piece in place while I install the dowel rods.
just finished up the shelf. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I've got all my fasteners and drill bits in one location. I've got a spot for charging my batteries and also a spot to hang my cordless tools. Just trying to get the shop organized, be more productive that way. But yes, this is needed for a long time, and I'm glad I got it complete. So hope you guys enjoy the video, and just remember, if you're making sawdust, you're making something.